Good evening and a very warm welcome to everyone who has joined us today for our insightful panel discussion. Better Place and ETHR World have come together to discuss and deep dive into the changing ecosystem for blue and gray collar workers. The reemergence of blue collar workers is happening, and the source of this reemergence is technology. Gig and blue collar workers are not treated as a B category employee anymore. They have become the backbone of your workforce. With startups turning into unicorns and traditional companies generating multifold revenue, it is their blue collar workers and the workforce who are giving them these standings. The time has come to give them back. As an employer, as an organization, you can give them the right of experience, making them a part of your corporate culture, upskilling them, and treat them like a white collar employees. Overall, companies should transform the world of work for blue collar workers, for their employees who work as gig workers, which is the need of the hour. And to stitch everything together, I have with me senior leaders from across the industry who will share thoughts, ideas on how to transform the ecosystem through technology and why technology will play a vital role in uplifting the current state of blue collar workers. And on that note, I would like to welcome our guests to this session. So my first guest is Mr. Rajendra Mehta, CHRO Wellspun India. Welcome, Mr. Mehta. Good to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you.
My next guest is Mr. Ranjan Sarkar, CHRO Excite Industries. Welcome, Mr. Sarkar. How are you?
Thank you for having me here. Nice to be a part of this session. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for joining. And my third guest, and I'm privileged to announce Mr. Sabyasachi Ray, Vice President HR, Bajaj Auto. Welcome, Mr. Ray.
Hi, thanks, Abid. Glad to be part of this session and look forward to it.
Thanks a lot for joining. And please welcome me in joining Vibhash Nayak, CHRO, HDFC Life. Welcome, Mr. Nayak.
Thank you, Abid, for the introduction, and I'm glad to kind of be a part of this session as well.
My next guest and moderator for the evening, Mr. Manish Pansari, Chief Business Officer, Better Place. Welcome, Mr. Pansari.
Thank you, Abid. Thanks for introducing and hosting this for us. Excited to be here and look forward to the session.
It's wonderful to see all such eminent speakers, and I'm looking forward to learning from this discussion. Over to you, Mr. Pansari. The frame is all yours.
Thank you, Abid, and good evening, everyone. This is really an exciting topic. Overall, how the blue collar and the gray collar workforce has come to full light, especially over the last 1.5 years. Everyone has started thinking about how they can really work with this to create significant impact for businesses, and to discuss how companies have been looking at it, new age, existing companies, how companies are adopting. We really have an eclectic panel here, and really excited to be hosting all of you. So thank you, Abid. Thanks, Economic Times, for giving us this opportunity. I will start off by just trying to understand what this is all about. And so, Rajendra, if I can ask you, for the benefit of the audience, can you talk a little bit about what is blue collar, what is white collar, how do we really see these differences, and what really goes into this?
Yeah. So thank you, Manish, for putting this question to me. If you look at US as a geography, or I'm just taking because there is a data available. If you pick up US as a geography, over next 10 years, there'll be roughly about 2.4 million, so-called blue-collar jobs would remain unfilled. The total impact of those unfilled roles would be roughly 2.5 trillion to that economy. Now, so so far what we have been doing we have been actually classifying our workforce into blue collar and white collar, etc. But to my mind, I think, we should just, this is a kind of stigmatizing the workforce with respect to their categorization. My sense is, I think we really need to move away from that, set of thought process. I'll give you a example of my previous organization and even this. In my previous organization, this set of, because of this differentiation between the blue collar and white collar, there was a huge amount of attrition that used to happen in the feet on street segment of workers, employees. That used to cost roughly about 1,200 crores of disbursements of loan. In Welspun, we have grown exponentially over last 1 year, 1.5 years, even through the thick of COVID times. And the only reason why we have grown is because our frontline employees, they believed in the organization, they created the value for the organization. And therefore, I think this whole thought process is largely remains thinking that, these are feet on the street and they are running processes or manufacturing, operations. And therefore, there's probably no thinking. On the contrary, I would now say that at least that set of people are getting governed by a norm of productivity, norm of output, norm of all that stuff, that, you need to deliver on that. There's nothing of that sort for managerial, cadre of people. I think we need to learn from these sets of people with respect to how do we use those productivity norms and ensure that we deploy it on the managerial strength as well. So to say that, the blue collar in a very traditional format was considered as people who are feet on the ground and possibly, drawing a minimum wages. Now, minimum wages also is a very, hygiene, whether it's at an officer level or at a worker level. Those are very hygiene levels. So we should not consider that as a parameter to define who comes under a blue collar and who comes under a white collar. My sense is the moment you integrate them in a larger ecosystem of the organization, it benefits the organization a lot. So let's not, create the differentiation between these two sets of people. They are also people who are, contributing to the business success. So that's brief about how I understand and I see their contribution to the overall business.
Yeah. No, absolutely, Rajendra. I mean, I think couldn't agree more. This is how they've been the backbone of all the businesses that we've seen over the last 1.5 years, and how they've helped businesses come back to their feet and really start pushing in this difficult times. They've really established that, and fully agree in terms of the perspective with which we see this has to be really different. Thank you for that. Let me move on, and Ranjan, you have a very interesting setup with you at Exide, where you have a manufacturing setup in one location. You have lots of people working on the floor, and you also have a service technician setup, which is like a distributed workforce across the country. So how do you see the differences between managing this distributed setup versus a centralized setup in your business?
The management of people in factory versus in sales is, in the factory, the entire management operates through a process of collective bargaining, where a certain set of people which we call union, basically discusses with the management on how to manage the rest of the people. Traditionally, the one-to-one linkage between the workers and the management, the dialogue is lesser. It's always through a group of body who is a representative of that set. However, that is slowly changing, as Rajendra Mehta also is saying, that organizations are now looking at being more inclusive, more holistic, talking to people not through a representative body. But however, that is the traditional setup. Whereas on the sales and service and on the foot on the street on that side, it's more driven by one-to-one communication, one-to-one management. They're just an extension of the sales and service management team. So just that the nature of job is more physical by nature than just managing people or elections. So, but the the way it is dealt with them, they're all the same, that their way their performance are evaluated and all that is all one-to-one, just like any other people. But of course, the scale changes.
Thank you, Ranjan. And I'll come back to you on some more questions around these areas. Thanks for that. Let me take this to the other extreme, right? And Vibhash, if I can ask you this. Overall, you have a setup which is distributed across the country, right? Very different than a centralized setup. How have you seen managing this? What are the kind of challenges you've seen? And especially over the last 2 years, what kind of tech applications you've seen in hiring and onboarding people across the country?
Thanks, Manish. So I represent a life insurance company. And as you rightly said, we've got, in our case, for example, we've got 22,000 people all spread across different parts of the country. So spread across 400 branches. In a life insurance company, a large part of the population is in sales. So we've got a huge FLS population, a feet on street or, frontline sales population, almost 16,000, 17,000 feet on street. The challenges is volume hiring. In this cadre of people, you see huge churn. There's a lot of attrition that happens. So you've got to replace. Plus, you also got to cater to all the additional requirements that keep on coming up. So challenges from our perspective is, volume hiring, distributed hiring. These are people who produce business for you. So you can't expect that this position to be vacant for a long period of time. So how do you increase the speed of hiring, reduce stats? How do you ensure that the quality does not suffer just because you're trying to kind of hire people at a fast pace? How do you ensure that you keep your cost per hire low? So these are some of the objectives that you're trying to kind of meet. In our case, what we've done is we've leveraged analytics. So there's huge data that got collected over a period of time. Every time a candidate would come for an interview, you would collect some data from him. We collected data over a period of 3 years, analyzed that data, looked at the demographic parameters, and tried to find out through using analytics, what are the parameters that could have a huge influence on retention as well as on productivity. Similarly, scientific tools. So using science, we decided to kind of use certain administer certain selection tools. So a cognitive ability test and a psychometric test. In our case, the purpose was when you're hiring huge numbers, and when it's getting hired across the country, try to reduce your dependence on people. Try to make the process so robust that one person or a set of people, they can't influence the quality of people and the speed of hiring. So you had to kind of leverage technology in a way that the entire process is paperless. It's touchless in some sense. The only place where people interact with a candidate is at the time of an interview. But everything before and after is automated. We have a referral app that tries to kind of, make referrals viral and have more number of leads coming into the funnel. The entire test process is automated. The offer making process is automated. The entire onboarding process is automated. So, at different points of time, triggers happen. There's a link that goes to the candidate. The candidate basically clicks on the link, uploads the documents, offer comes to him. Acceptance of the offer happens digitally. Joining process happens digitally. There's a virtual onboarding session that happens for these people. The entire onboarding orientation process is a blend of both. It's a virtual training plus there are mobile learning. Through mobile learning, there are nuggets, which are learning nuggets, which are short, small, bite-sized learning nuggets, which are available for people, and that's how they get inducted into the system as well. So from our perspective, how do you make this entire process seamless, improve the candidate experience, improve the user experience, and ensure that you don't compromise on the quality of hire while you're kind of doing all the activities that I just spoke of. Okay, that's been the challenge, and that's what we've tried to kind of do using technology. Without technology, I think it's all these things would have been that much more difficult.
No, thanks, Vibhash. That's actually very, very exciting to hear, and I'm sure being the leaders in the space, the process that you spoke about is signs of things to come for the entire ecosystem, right? I mean, and this is what everyone is looking at doing. It's actually refreshing to hear that you have something like this, and you're looking at scaling that up. Thank you. Thanks for that. Let me move on to Sabyasachi. And again, interesting, right? I mean, very, very different setup that you have compared to HDFC Life's distributed setup. Would love to hear how you've looked at, applying technology in talent acquisition and driving your process efficiency.
Interestingly, though, it's very diverse in terms of the industry. A lot of what I'm going to share is very similar to what actually Bhivash shared just now. So in terms of talent acquisition, a lot of our blue collar, so I'm using this term blue collar because I mean it's there in the topic. So by blue collar, I mean the non-managerial workforce. Broadly, I kind of mean that piece. So we mainly hire blue collar employees every year through the diploma trainee hiring route. So what used to happen before, and the hiring number is quite large, obviously not as large as an insurance company, but yeah, it goes beyond 1,000. So still it's a volume hiring, you can say, in a way, for 3 locations rather. So previously what used to happen is people used to go to different diploma institutes. They used to follow, a panel used to go, they used to shortlist based on resumes, they used to interview, they used to roll out offers, and candidates used to join the normal process of hiring. So what used to happen is a lot of managerial bandwidth and time which kind of got eaten into in this entire process. So what we have done now is kind of automated the entire diploma training hiring process. So what happens now is there is no manual intervention till the person joins the company. The steps are as follows. So typically there is a portal in which all the applicants kind of upload their profiles. There is a partner who helps us in this process. So the partner does a basic sanity check and then kind of sends a link, which is a test for the applicants. So the applicants undergo the test. So it also standardizes the process. Like multiple panels visiting multiple institutes doesn't help in standardizing a process. So through this test, we exactly evaluate the same thing across the country, whichever institutes we are tapping into. So based on the test result, whoever clears the test, then another link goes out for a psychometric instrument. This is basically to test some of the behavioral indicators that are required to be working on the line, on the production line. And based on the result of the test and the psychometric output, the report of the psychometric instrument, the offer letters are auto-triggered. So offer letters are auto-triggered, I mean, basically mentioning the location and the time of joining. And then the candidate comes and joins at the given time and location, which is mentioned in the letter. So, and that's when, during the onboarding and the induction, that's when a bit of manual intervention happens. The induction process is not fully automated yet. So that's when the manual intervention happens. But till the time a candidate joins, the entire process has been fully automated. What it helps is 2 things. One, it frees up a lot of managerial bandwidth. So you don't need those panels visiting campuses every year. Second, it also gives the candidates a seamless hiring experience. And so you don't need to wait outside the interview room for us, waiting for your turn to come, etc., etc. So it makes the process very seamless and gives them a very pleasant hiring experience. So with that objective, we have been able to improve the efficiency of the overall trainee hiring process.
Thank you, Sabyasachi. And it's good to see that, different kind of setups, different contexts, but everyone looking at the same stuff. Thank you. Thanks for that. Rajendra, just let me jump to you to say, you know what, maybe from a WellSponge perspective as well, can you please share what kind of technology adoption is on your agenda? How have you seen it? And what are the different things you are looking at?
So, fortunately for us, the business has been hugely on a growth mode. And since the time of COVID, our growth has been, we have every month on month, we were hitting the high numbers. And fortunately, that happened because of, whether the 90% of our businesses in US and UK and Europe. The other 3 country, geographies where we operate. And, the demand was very high in these geographies. And because being in the home body products, then because of COVID, the requirement for hygienal, products suddenly shot up. So our growth trajectory actually shot up. At that point in time, I think, capacities, the assets in terms of capacities are limited. Now, what do? You actually do bottlenecking debottlenecking of your plant operations. And then you start looking at how do we convert the factories into smart factories. Now, a lot of opportunities. So we have gone into Industry 4.0 transformation agenda. A lot of automation is under process at this point in time. And with that, we have been able to, raise our production by about 20 odd percent, 25% plus in our large operations, which exists in Anjar, Vapi, and Hyderabad. So we roughly have about 25, 26,000 employees working in these two geographies. What we have started doing is we started engaging our workmen or our blue collar or our feet on the ground with all kinds of technological changes, advancement that we're doing. What we do is while we run a project on the shop floor, there is a IE head and the supervisor on specific lines. We use those people, supervisors, to ensure that the employees on those lines are also guided with respect to the implementation that's happening. The intent is that we give them that exposure of what is happening and give them the comfort that it is not going to hurt their employment. But what it will do is that with the same capacities or same setup that we have in terms of our assets, we are able to produce more. And therefore, instead of having to hire more people in times to come, we will manage with them, but make them more efficient and relevant for future. So plethora of technologies, whether it is enterprise-wide software development or creating data logs through machines, giving them efficiency data, giving them real-time training to ensure that, wherever, so if there are 100 people working on a line, we know who's in green zone, who's in yellow zone, and who's in red zone. And the reasons behind that, then supervisor gets to know, and immediately on the shop floor itself, the training happens, and then the intent is that we push up the productive level. So these are some of the initiatives which actually helped us to ensure that we were able to cater to the demands. China was not able to deliver. There was, and I think globally, China +1 was the policy most of the countries were adopting. And that benefit actually came to us in this whole segment. So we have grown, and I think we see our next 2-3 years journey as well, hugely on a growth mode. But, a lot of training, a lot of digital training, we are exposing our, frontline employees to. So that's actually helped us to remain, relevant and grow. I think Welspun has quarter on quarter given best results. Our Q1 is better than Q4. So that's where we are, so far.
No, I think good to hear that, Rajendra. I mean, I think it's been an exciting journey, difficult but exciting for most of us, right? So very good to hear that. You spoke about learning. Vibhash, let me pick that for your context in a distributed setup, right? How are you managing learning and development for your distributed setup, especially when you spoke about attrition being very high, getting everyone up to speed and pushing that? How have you applied tech there?
So, if I look at my distributed workforce, and when I say distributed, I mean the sales force. You expect these people to go out there, meet the customer, and sell a insurance policy in our case. And if you have a churn, then you have a lot of new population that keeps on entering the organization. These people have to be up to speed with the product, with the process. They need to have the right capability, skills to be productive on the job. If you look at this population, in the hierarchy, they are low down in the chain, but extremely important because they are the ones who kind of, get the money for us, and they are the ones who kind of do business. Span of attention is very low. You don't, getting everyone in a room to kind of, get them trained is not always easy. So you will end up always missing out on a set of learners to whom you will not be able to kind of give this knowledge. So we, earlier it used to be online learning, but almost 6 years back, we embarked on this journey of mobile learning, bite-sized, anywhere, anytime, learning on demand. So we've got a very robust, mobile learning platform, and people can quickly log onto it and learn, whatever is required to be learned. In fact, we nudge people to kind of complete certain courses which are necessary. Some of the things are mandatory for them to kind of complete. We also have a chatbot, and in case a salesperson is stuck trying to kind of figure out what the features of the product are, or how this process works, or anything else, he can ask a question and the chatbot will kind of give you an answer, and that's how the learning happens. In fact, now we've reached a stage wherein we are trying to personalize the entire learning platform. So what people see on the learning platform depends on in terms of what the requirement is and who the individual is. So and the whole UI UX is likely to look like a Netflix platform wherein it's completely hyper personalized. So it's like learning in your pocket. Pull out your phone and learn, and it'll nudge you to kind of learn things whenever you want them to kind of learn what you want them to do.
I think the power of this personalized learning is immense, right? You can look at what kind of feedback you're getting, how that individual is performing, customize and really do that.
And we've got a 95% adoption. So it's not like, you've got to push people to kind of use it. It's part of life now. With 95% adoption, I think everyone kind of goes there and learns, and it's part of life.
That's interesting. Actually, I'll come back to you, Vivash, on this entire adoption and how this has happened. But let me come back to you on that part. Sabyasachi, again, in your setup, how have you driven talent development, trying to improve productivity? How has that been for you?
Yeah, so I'll just maybe start off from where I left in my kind of last response, where I said that we hire around more than 1,000 people on a yearly basis. So I'll just divide my response to this question which you asked in two parts. One is the learning needs for these new hires who are joining every year. And second is what we are doing for the overall your blue collar population as such. So the first point, the objective for adopting tech is so these new people join, and after the initial induction, which is both theoretical and practical, they get deployed on the line, on the production line, on the shop floor. And one of the key objectives is to make them optimally productive at the least possible time. And we have to also ensure that they get deployed fast, and also we have to ensure that error rate, defect rate is minimized, as much as possible. So towards that objective, what we have seen is we have looked at all the stages in the production line. If there are, say, 100, 150 stages, we have identified the critical ones in terms of importance, in terms of complexity, where chances of error is high. And for those critical ones, we are using virtual reality as a tool for training the frontline workmen, the blue collar workers. So for those stages, they, along with all the other induction process, they go through a virtual reality module, which helps them to kind of understand, pick it up very fast, and be optimally productive in the minimum possible time, which is anyways the objective that it was set out with. So that is the new journey part. The other objective is how do we look at learning in general for the entire blue collar population. And in this response, again, it is very similar to what Vivash said just now. So what we have tried to do is we have a learning experience platform for the managerial cadre, which to a large extent is very personalized. But for the blue collar workmen, we are in the final stage of extending the learning experience platform to the blue collar workforce, where again the learning content and the modules will be bite-sized, and it will help them in self-paced learning at their own pace, at their own time. So one of the challenges that we face in manufacturing locations is basically pulling out people from their ships and put them in some training programs which had been done traditionally. But with this change in approach, the objective is to continuously help them in upskilling themselves, to help them in improving their productivity without disturbing the shift timings, without kind of pulling them out from their regular work, etc. So these two approaches have been kind of deployed, one for the new hires and one for the overall population of blue collar as such, which has definitely helped in improving the productivity levels of the workforce.
Sure. It is actually interesting how some of these things can be applied across the organization and for different use cases. Ranjan, maybe if you can talk about how in Exide, you've been applying technology to drive people effectiveness.
Yeah, so I will see, as you said in the beginning, Excite, I have got a very diverse scale of people in their digital journey, in their multi-age groups, like somebody, the age group returns, the nature of job, it's very different. Like, for example, since today we are discussing about, you call it blue collar, or people who are at the, if you don't want to use the color because that would be discriminatory, if you want to just say lower in the pyramid. So the bulk is either towards the business side, like insurance has, or the sales and service people in our case, or towards the manufacturing side. Now, if I, for the time being, leave out the management of their HR management part of it, which is, I guess, most companies have already covered that path and everything is in HRMS and that is already there. Now, we are talking, when you're talking about applying of tech, we are talking about the next generation tech. So I will talk about these two areas a little differently. First, I'll talk about the bottom of the pyramid in sales and service. Okay, here, younger age group, uh, more like fit on street, and uh, their uh, their work involves the decision making on the go because they are out in the field. They're not a captive audience. They're in the field dealing with the customer, trade. So obviously, tech has helped us in a big way. For example, uh, today there are systems like C4C and all that, where you actually can give them a lot of dashboards and information to help them do better. Then that is the first stage. The second stage of is that from a dashboard, if there are a lot of decision DSS push. For example, I go to a particular place in Andhra Pradesh, and I go to a location in Hyderabad. The dashboard not only gives me information about dealers, their sale and all that, but also there is an AI that happens at the backend analytics and gives me a lead that, okay, approach customer ABCD. Last week he has taken so many orders. He can give you more. His counter share is this, and if you can put some market intelligence into it, also like competition doing this, so it gives you leads of decision. So that, because like Vivash said, these people are we are having younger people to that extent. They're the lower part of decision making is lower. They're obviously they're not that experienced yet. They have to take the most important decision there right now, which is dealing with the customer. So they need a lot of aided support from with help of technology from backend on the decision, because they cannot take those decisions. So that's one kind of tech applicability in frontline. Plus, nowadays, these geotagging systems are there. So actually, you can tag along your journey plans and sitting here, because you don't have attendance and those kind of management systems with them. So they actually can plan their work routine and how many calls they will make and all that. And you can actually, the head office or their managers can actually track that through a geotagging system. It goes and it from a satellite tagging, it can actually tell you whether you have visited so many. So monitoring of supervisory time can be brought down by using some of these technologies on front end. Now this is on one side of the pyramid. The other side, which is the manufacturing, as I said, these are profile-wise mid-aged people, economically from the little lower this thing. However, to my surprise, whenever we go for any initiatives like Rajendra Sabyasachi was talking about in smart factories and all that, I see although they're mid-aged and we think that they are not high, learning is less, but I see that they have adopted, they are interested, and sometimes more than a management stuff, because there is a hunger, they have not seen these things. So the adoption of technology on the manufacturing side, less on the management of their job, because they are primarily a captive audience, or a captive set of employees, but more from productivity enhancement. That's where tech is applied. Today we are moving from, earlier we used to have all these classroom training and those kind of things. That has moved into videos, because these population actually they don't learn by typical traditional ways of text or sound or lecture. They learn by seeing. They learn a job, and even your topic includes today gray collar also. A lot of gray collar jobs who are little outside, little different kind of jobs. They learn through experience by seeing somebody else. The skill picking up happens a lot through visual observation. So tech has been adopted in the areas of video training and using visuals, communication. Those are the things that
Sure.
is adopted in the factory, particularly wherever factories are moving from traditional factories to smart factories nowadays. And that is where the tech is applied. That's one. The other thing is, I've just noted down somewhere. The other thing is, somebody mentioned about virtual reality or augmented reality sometimes, but that is very costly still. It's very costly in India still. But in areas like environment, health and safety, particularly safety training and all that, where experiential training is required, particularly at a shop floor level, VR becomes very handy. Provided, of course, you can work out the cost and all that, because you cannot actually make an accident to make him see how an accident is. You have to simulate an accident to make him see the safety procedure. So, whichever of our companies or various companies where health and safety and all matters are becoming very important, technology respect to virtual reality is used. Even currently, I am also in talks with some companies to make something like that, to simulate things which is otherwise very difficult to kind of
Sure.
communicate or train. Thirdly, which is I think a trend nowadays, the manufacturing is also evolving from a typical mechanical to electrical electronics in the 90s, and now it is going into more chip based and smart factories and more sensor based. So it's more moving towards what we generally call the direction of industry 4.0. Okay, so while that is happening, your workforce or the people their nature of work is also changing a little bit, and hence not the technology adoption in terms of working also, that habits and all that is also changing. So there also I think that adoption of technology is happening slowly, I must say, but it's happening in the
Sure.
direction, because it is not about replacing their work, but upskilling them to work in the new environment. That's what I think is a
Yeah.
journey of tech.
No, that's a very interesting, and this always is a question: is technology going to replace people, or are they going to enhance people's skills? And I think as leaders in the industry, it's important for us to start thinking about how we really do that. I'm quickly going to go around the table for a quick a question. We spoke about how technology is being deployed by the organization. What's one challenge that you're facing in getting this adopted by the people who need to use it, and how you overcome? Rajendra, let me start with you. Very quickly, how
Sure. So, what we did in the adoption stage, we believe that it's a cultural issue. There is a method of working which existed for so many years, and then I think we suddenly need to move away from there. So what we did, we identified about roughly about 1,300 odd Excel sheets which was getting worked out. So every business we went and we saw that there were Excel sheets which were being used for data simulations or dashboards or presentations. We wanted to ensure that the data that gets churned should not be in Excel form. It should come from the machine. It should come from the system itself. So therefore, we said that we will eliminate this. As long as you continue to work on Excel sheets, you will not get to the stage of going to the machine, pulling the data, and making sense of that data through statistical models or AI ML applications. So we said that in the first year, we will ensure that 1,300 Excel sheets will be eliminated. We pushed that into the KPIs of all the heads, and we also appointed Deloitte as our auditors. we didn't want this whole process to be internally validated, internally certified. We wanted a third party to be there who then says that, okay, I have understood HR and finance and procurement and manufacturing's overall scope on this, and how does it impact in my reviews. So we do our reviews on dashboards now. So what we said that somebody, a third party, has to come review our what we committed to the organization. That became our first gate of even variable pay this year. Now, when we were paying our variable pay, we first went to Deloitte to ask them whether what we committed at the earlier at the beginning of the year, that these are some of the scope and we want to eliminate these Excel sheets. We want to build one data truth so that nobody massages the data, nobody brings their own perspective, etc. So, and the other element of this is that we want to connect our end customer as well. So when the data, one data, which is a truth, which moves through the system and goes to the end mile customer as well, then there is a seamlessness that we build. So we ensured that we push the system in terms of adapting this, and therefore, the below the layers as well, then the same method of, workways actually evolves. Yeah. That's what we did this year, and we pushed it. Yeah.
That's interesting. Vivash, again, same question for you. With sales productivity enhancement, how have you been able to drive the adoption of the tools that you have?
Okay, so a couple of things. I think old habits don't die very fast. So you've got to have both a push strategy as well as a pull strategy. I think first and foremost, whatever tool and technology you are trying to kind of implement in the company, if that tool and application is not good or the experience is not good for the user, he or she will kind of go back to. So first and foremost, I think that application needs to be robust. If it's not robust, people are not going to use it. Second is you got to push them. Okay, there needs to be some punitive methods. Say, for example, your incentives are linked to it, your bonus is linked to it, or some other things are linked to it, wherein people don't have a choice, but they have to kind of use it. If you keep two doors open, people will make a choice. So if there is a old way of doing things, you got to close that door, and people don't have a choice but to kind of use this. Yeah. Similarly, we also used rewards and rewards. Like, in case of training, for example, you complete training programs, you earn credits. You accumulate those credits, and those credits in turn are linked to your career growth within the organization, so on and so forth. It's linked to your performance, blah, blah, blah. Sure, so you got to have both, a push and a pull strategy. And the pull comes from rewards, pull comes from how good the application is, and push is like, you close all doors and nudge people to go.
Interesting. Sabyasachi, exactly 30 seconds. One wish list that you have that technology has not been able to solve for you so far.
Okay. Maybe going forward, being an aggregator of supply and demand for the industry. So for gig workers, okay, there can be a aggregation of demand from the industry side, where companies might want to use gig workers, and people who want to work part-time or for specific projects can put their profile up, selling their skills, and maybe technology can help in matching those skills and saying, where the demand and supply matches.
Sure, interesting. Ranjan, same question for you. One wish list that you think tech has not been able to solve for you so far.
See, I don't look at tech as the end result, but tech as an enabling for something else I'm trying to achieve. So I would not say that whether technology has helped me achieve, because my end result is either a business result or a people result or a quality result. So, but limitations, if I could say, if I just answer this question in a little different way, there are, I think sometimes when we apply technology, we sometimes feel that, or like Vivash mentioned, we look at it from the applicability of technology rather from the user point of view. So for example, and that's where sometimes limitation comes in. There are examples of beautiful ERP systems, but how difficult it is to navigate through those. So the ease of use, because somewhere who designed it or who is kind of implementing is thinking from the tech side. But if we shift the angle and we look from the user side, I think the adoption can be much better in any technology, provided we look at tech as not the objective, but tech as only the enabler to a particular some other objective, a business objective.
Sure.
Well,
So absolutely.
It's been a constant challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I've got to wrap up here. I know we're on the clock here, but it's been an exciting session, hearing perspectives. We as Better Place have been in this technology space, looking at how blue collar ecosystem is evolving. But really exciting to see the leaders are actually doing a lot of these things. So I think there's clear consensus that this is going to continue. This journey is going to change. So that's really refreshing to hear. The second consensus, I think all of us agree, blue collar is just a term. I think it's more about getting the right nomenclature for this segment. This segment is adding significant value for all of us, and how do we really see that difference? With that, thank you so much. Thanks for your time. Abid, over to you.
Thank you so much. I think we are getting a lot of questions here, but I'll take a few questions that I can ask to all the speakers here. So I'll start with Sabyasachi. Sabyasachi, I have a question for you. So Tuhin Sarkar is asking, blue gray collar workers, employees in number of places are union represented, be it external or internal. In the opinion of the panel, how tech savvy are union opinion makers, and does their comfort with tech, in your opinion, impacts their judgment?
Let me give an example maybe to kind of respond to this question. We had moved, yes, absolutely right. The blue collar workforce in our context, some of them are unionized, some of them are non-unionized. So we have to deal with both kinds of workforce as far as blue collar workmen is concerned. Let me just give an example to quickly try to respond to that. So we moved to an online appraisal system for blue collar workforce. So initially, obviously, there were lots of forms. I mean, for unionized, there is a different form. For non-unionized, there is a different form. There are different levels, there is a different form. For promotion, there is a different form. For upgradation, there is a different form. So everything is manual. So imagine the kind of complexity of the entire process, and needless to mention, lots and lots of paper being wasted in the entire process. So we moved to a completely online system for appraisal of blue collar workforce. Now, obviously, that will kind of come with some kind of a resistance, initial resistance, some kind of difficulty in adoption to the change. So I think what needs to precede any such change is a thorough communication, highlighting one, obviously the initiative and the product has to be solid. That goes without saying. Second, I think the objective, why it is being done, how it can help others. I think that communication needs to be very carefully planned out and very thoroughly implemented. So what we had done, we had actually, other than oral communication, we had also prepared a detailed SOP for the new online system in multiple languages, and then kind of took the entire population through that SOP, where it is listed item by item, line by line, step by step, what exactly one needs to do, and what is the advantage that you get if you kind of move to this. It's a seamless experience of appraisal. It's a much better employee experience. It kind of does away with a lot of other unnecessary manual interventions, and obviously is environment friendly because it saves a lot of paper. So I think the communication in terms of how it can benefit that particular workforce will be important.
Thank you so much, Sabyasachi. I think the next question is for Vivash, and Sunita Viswas is asking, what are the challenges you face in upskilling, reskilling blue collar employees? How are you overcoming these?
As I said, distributed workforce, their span of attention is very low. Getting all of them to sit in a classroom and attend a 3-hour, 4-hour workshop may not always be possible. Also, different people are at different stages of proficiency. So, even when you get people in a class, somebody's at a basic level, somebody's at enter level, somebody's at advanced level. I think the only way you could probably fix this is personalizing the learning content and the learning journey. And this is possible if we adopt technology. In our case, for example, we pushed mobile learning. Adopting something which is good is never a problem, is what I feel. If people think that it's useful, they will use it. If it's not useful, they will not use it. So if people don't adopt it, rather than trying to blame the learner, I think we should introspect and try to find out in terms of why people are not using it if it's so good. And if probably if they're not using it, probably it's not good enough. And you've got to kind of change the whole experience for these people.
Vivash, if you can add on this adjacent question to this, what are the new trends during pandemic or otherwise in talent management space for blue collar employees? There were two questions, so that's
Yeah.
why.
So this pandemic and new way of working, I feel is a little hyped. Okay, any progressive organization would want to kind of do, everybody is trying to kind of get ready so that tomorrow, in case there is any kind of disruption that happens, are you in a position to basically face that challenge. I think it's good in a way that COVID happened and the pandemic happened, because it just accelerated the entire digital journey for companies all across. Companies who are already thinking about it, they were ahead of the game, did not start preparing because of COVID. Okay, but the ones who weren't probably tried to, they had no choice but to step up the accelerator on all digital means to enable their employees, so on and so forth, whether it's work from home or whether and ensuring that you're completely digitizing the journey for your salespeople, or using bots and trying to reduce all repetitive monotonous kind of jobs. Is pandemic really changing things? I think the only one thing change that I see is acceleration of all digital things and technology adoption, which probably a few people were not doing earlier.
Thanks, Vivash. I think very quickly I'll go to the another question, and that is for Mr. Mehta. So technology helps in faster results. However, how do we match up the human touch? That's I think very basic but very important question. What are your thoughts, Mr. Mehta?
Yeah. So my belief is that, in this whole life cycle of working together, there would be 100 touch points that we probably had lived with. Now we need to prioritize that, which is the touch which is still important. Now, I think we cannot let certain touches just go away and become mechanical. So in our case, when it comes to recognizing people, every month we ensure that our best talent, our best performers are recognized, whether it's on a forum which is Teams led, MS Teams led, or on the floor if it is about our employees. We ensure that there is a personal touch which is there. A lot of areas where I think we can depend on digital flow of work, we do that, but this whole human connect we cannot leave. I can only tell you that in spite of the high impact of COVID in wave 1 and wave 2, we always visited our plant locations, because I think it was important for the employees to see the faces of leadership being around with them, because everybody was in some form or the other was going through all kinds of exigencies, medical, family issues. So we wanted to be there, and I think we flew every week. We flew to one of these locations to ensure that we are connected with the last mile. It's the comfort. So we cannot insulate employees from that relationship. We need to identify which are our high touch points and low touch points. We need to categorize that and then work towards that.
Thanks.
I hope I answered this.
Thanks a lot, Rajna. Ranjan, coming to you, the question is how to look at recruitment and training in case of blue/gray collar worker workforce who are off role.
Well, in our case, that recruitment is more also outsourced for an off-role people. Okay, we are not, but where we are, what we do is we have a quality filter. That's where we try to kind of keep a little bit of some process checks. And if I don't know if this question is with respect to technology, then of course, as I spoke just now, that whether they're off-road or on-road, if they're doing a very similar kind of job, there's a lot of technology adoption, respect to decision support, with respect to making giving them snippets of learning as and when they required at their palm top, so that they can take decisions quickly. It is not, so learning is no more like, at particularly at lower level, where they're actually doing the job on the go. They are here and now. They're not doing jobs which are strategy in nature, like 3 months hence or 1 month hence. They are doing jobs of today's impact, tomorrow's impact. And hence learning cannot happen. You learn everything, then you go back to work and apply. So it is becoming on the spot, on the go. So hence learning has become more, at the point of doing. So not just through, inputs of knowledge, but through inputs of decision making. So a lot of enablers are used, videos are used at this level. I'm talking about sales and service here, And of course, we are also looking at digitized learning at the factory level. I talked about VR and all this for safety and some of this technology we are adopting.
Thanks, Ranjan. Another question for you, Vibhash. Arjun Nath is asking, interesting to hear what Vibhash mentioned about personalized learning. My question for him is, was the platform developed in-house or an external platform was used?
No, it's an external platform that's been used. So it's not developed internally.
Okay, no problem. Thanks for the answer and for the quick answer. Sabyasachi, coming back to you, another question is, how do you check the understanding of each user employee in the current times, especially in the current times, in the absence of personal connect of a trainer, mentor, or supervisor?
Understanding of that initiatives, tech implementation, or
Yes.
understanding of, is there anything else? Understanding of tech implementation?
Yes.
Exactly. Okay. So understanding of tech implementation, I think it's evident in the results. So for example, if you talk of learning and development initiatives where we have implemented tech, so in terms of how many people, and there are dashboards. So in terms of how many people doing how many courses, how many learning hours, whether there is a continuous learning which is happening, etc. So the dashboard gives gives a reflection of what is happening in the employees.
And Abid, sorry, I thought I'll just add to that entire part of understanding and assessment. You know, one other interesting thing that is happening is similar to what Vibhash is saying. It's not just learning, even assessment has become personalized. So it's all gamified. You know, there are enough two-way interactions that you can do. Even one way you can actually assess whether the person has understood or redo the course. So all of this has actually become digitized. So that will also help you.
Have an adaptive assessment engine based on, you know, where you are in terms of your maturity, the kind of questions pop up, and, you know, that's how it keeps on nudging you to kind of, you know, increase your proficiency level, so on and so forth. Yeah, true.
I think we have received so many questions that we don't have time. So, but still, I'll just ask one more question, one or two more questions. So the question for you, Rajendra, is, it's very simple yet extremely significant question. You know, about the engagement part. So how to engage blue collar employees and make them more productive? So
my personal experience has been, I think you know, the moment we give them respect and we treat them as part of a larger subset of the organization, their need is very emotional. And I think you know what mostly people end up doing, or the managers end up doing, is that they discount their contribution. And the moment that happens, I think the whole relationship is little non-emotive to that extent. And that's where I think the whole supervisory capability to be paternal in nature, being able to lead them as a family, I think these are some of the emotions that we need to hold them with. And I've seen in my both last organization as well as this, that piece, the way you come across, the way you resolve their issues and be connected to them, they are with you. And I think that adds a lot of value in terms of their attention and their engagement. That's the starting point to my mind. And then over a period of time, start engaging. I think, all of us, whether it's you or me or the employee at the last level of the pyramid, our needs are very similar. They also need to learn, they also need to grow, they also need to earn. We need to be able to create programs around these three elements for them as well. As long as that is satisfying them, my sense is the ability to attract, retain, and their engagement the whole quotient definitely grows up. My first take is emotional connect with these people.
Thank you so much. I think, sorry, I have to end here because we have so many questions, but we don't have time. But I am sure for all our attendees, you can definitely keep in touch with them and connect them over social media platforms and LinkedIn, especially, where our experts will answer all your questions. And thanks a lot, gentlemen. Thanks a lot for sharing your thoughts and stitching it together. It was wonderful hosting you and learning from you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Abid. Thanks,
Thank
Manish.
you.
Thanks,
Thank you, Abid. Thanks, Manish.
Thank you, Manish.